Welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 117.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Have you turned your key and heard that dreaded tick, 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 tick because of a dead battery? No worries. I've got the NOCO Genius Boost Jump Starter. This compact tool fits in your glove box and features rechargeable lithium battery technology that will start a dead battery in your car, boat, truck, or RV. It packs a whopping 12-volt, 400 amp starting power and can start up to 20 dead batteries on a single charge. Plus, it has built-in spark-proof technology with reverse polarity protection to safely jumpstart your vehicle. The compact, ergonomically designed clamps are solid copper for maximum conductivity, and there's a built-in ultra-bright dual LED flashlight with 7 modes, including an SOS emergency strobe. It's easily rechargeable with a USB outlet, and you can charge your smartphone or tablet while you're on the road. Works on any 12-volt lead-acid battery. The Genius Boost from NOCO is the ultimate emergency tool that's safe and easy to use. Quality design, state-of-the-art technology from NOCO, your battery care source since 1914. Get yours at geniuschargers.com. Hello, automotive enthusiasts. Today I'm extremely excited to introduce a very special guest, Denise McCluggage. Denise, are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
Yeah, can you do a wheelie?
I will do my best to impress you. I'll give that a try. Denise McCluggage is a legend in the automotive world. She's a race car driver, a journalist, an author, a photographer, and an honorary judge at Pebble Beach, Amelia Island, and the Santa Fe Concorso. She embarked upon a racing career in the late 50s and took part in many international sports car races. Her co-competitors included the likes of Juan Manuel Fangio, Sir Stirling Moss, Phil Hill, and many others. She won at numerous racetracks around the world and has driven many outstanding race cars. Her trademark white and black polka-dotted helmet was a standout on tracks around the world. She's an award-winning journalist, a writer and photographer, and Denise holds the Ken W. Purdy Award for Excellence in Automotive Journalism and the Dean Bachelor Lifetime Achievement Award, and she was the first journalist to be inducted into the Automotive Hall of Fame. Her adventurous spirit and zest for life are simply magical. So Denise, I've told our listeners just a little bit about you. Would you take a few moments and share a little more about your incredible history, your career around automobiles, your interest, and of course, your passion for automobiles?
It was all really happenstance, quite accidental. Nothing was planned. When you were a woman journalist, as I was and am, you couldn't then plan for much because you weren't allowed in a lot of places. I mean, for instance, I wasn't when I covered Indianapolis for the Herald Tribune. I get out there with my credentials and everything, and they won't let me in the garage area.
Oh my gosh!
So I had to, I had to interview the drivers through a chain link fence, you know.
Oh, wow!
Then I wasn't allowed in the press box until the guy, my friend Frank Blunt from the New York Times, said, "Well, if you don't need the Herald Tribune, you don't need the New York Times either," and turned around, started walking out. And so I broke a barrier that year. Women allowed in the press box, or a woman anyhow, in the press box at Indianapolis. So
that's so cool.
You couldn't plan on that basis, you know.
Sure, sure.
I just went along with things and I had a good time.
You certainly have had an immensely incredible life around automobiles, and as a journalist, and you're still writing to this day for so many different publications. But as a race car driver, how on earth did you get involved and break into that barrier?
Well, the thing was, I was a journalist, right? Mm-hmm. And I happened to do what I wrote about. I was a ski editor, so I skied all winter. You know, it was a pretty good racket. I got paid for going skiing and paid to go motor racing.
Wow.
So I said I wanted to cover this new sport of sports car racing, and talked them into it. We were the first one at the Herald Tribune, to have a regular column about sports car racing. It was a great scam. I went to the races and raced, and I'd jump out of the car and said, "Hey, who finally won that?" Fish was leading when they passed me. And then I put my little portable typewriter on a stack of tires, and you can tell how long ago that was to have a stack of tires. Now, one of them would be a table.
Sure.
And it was terrific because I had a lot of adrenaline from the race, so I just buzzed through my story and called it in, and I had been working.
Yeah. Well, was racing something that you had a passion for from the time you were young, or was it something that developed through your journalism?
There wasn't a lot of racing. There certainly wasn't any road racing in the U.S. to speak of. I'd go to the Topeka State Fair and watch the sprint cars and the half-milers, I think they called them, and race on the dirt track, and that was always very exciting. And we'd go to Colorado. I lived in Kansas, so we'd go to Colorado for several weeks every summer, and at that time, the Pikes Peak Hill Climb was on Labor Day. And so it sort of ended the summer. And I got to go to that a couple of times when I was like 10 years old. Louis Unser was my hero because he was always winning, like every Unser after him, winning at Pikes Peak. He was, as I said, my hero. But the great thing was they had a lot of concessions around various places of little race cars, small race cars that kids could drive. And they weren't ones that were attached to one of those things that go around and around, like a merry-go-round type thing with a car that you sat in. They were loose cars.
Wow.
And they'd go as fast as 10 miles an hour. They had a little gas engine in them. Mm-hmm. So I would pretend I was Louis Unser and go driving in this. And I liked that a lot. That was it was a great feeling.
Sure, the feeling of speed, the feeling of freedom, and wow, that's tremendous.
And the feeling of control.
Yes.
Even then, that you were aiming it in the direction you wanted it to go. It was doing what you wanted it to do. And there were a lot of little tricks and things that you could do to make it get a little bit sideways even.
And why am I not surprised at Denise McCluggage getting sideways in a go-kart at 10 years old? That's fantastic. I always love to start talks with my guests here on Cars Yeah with an inspirational quote. And it's something that has a meaning to you, especially you being a journalist working with words your entire life. This is something that is a great way to get the inspirational tires turning here on Cars Yeah. So, Denise, what is your inspirational quote? Take the wheel.
Well, actually, I can't remember who said it, but I used it in my ski book. But anyway, it was, forget quotations, tell me what you know.
Well, how have you incorporated that into your life around cars and your passion for cars and riding?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I liked writing. That's what I did for a living. And my purpose was to make my experiences real for people who didn't have the opportunity to do them as I did.
Yeah,
and
perfect.
When I was a sports writer on the Herald Tribune, I would do things like I jumped out of an airplane. With a parachute, no fool I. But it was a new sport. Parachuting was just starting kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, I'll write an article about that. So I made a number of parachute jumps and wrote about that. I wrote about driving a racehorse and a sulky thing, and I wrote about whatever it seemed interesting, and a lot of it had to do with race cars and cars of some kind.
Sure.
So,
oh, fantastic! I love so many aspects of that. Just tell me what you know, because doing things is how you learn about things, and you certainly have done a lot of things in your life. That's tremendous. On your automotive journey through life, is there a moment that you can remember that instigated your passion for cars? That pivotal moment in your life when you really knew you were a car gal?
Well, when I was very small, I had a pedal car. And, it was active and it was a car. In fact, on the back cover of my book, By Brooks Too Broad for Leaping, there's a picture of me in that car with a little neighbor boy. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see that I was driving.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I have a similar picture. My uncle, when I was very little, gave me a Garton pedal car. It was a Cadillac. And I remember, it was called a Cadillac, and it was designed after a 50s Cadillac. And I kind of remember that. I was quite young, but I do remember my mom gave it away when we moved, and I've bothered her about that ever since, saying, "Why did you give away my Cadillac? I wish I still had that." But
yeah, well, those things are valuable now.
Well, they are too. Yeah, I think the sentimental value would mean more to me than anything. But it's great that pivotal moment for you was in a car and pedaling in a car.
The other thing was that there was a neighbor who was then, he was, to me, he was a man. He was just in junior college, a rancher, and he taught me to ride a horse, and he taught me to drive when I was like 4 years old. I mean, I would do the steering, he would do everything else.
Yeah.
And so I was convinced that I was a driver at age 4.
Oh, that's fantastic. Even better. What I'd love to do now is maybe drive down some of the roads that you've driven down. You've had such a rich life and really crawl under the hood here. And I'd love for you to share maybe one huge challenge or even a great failure that you faced in your life that you can recall. But more importantly, how did you overcome that situation and what did you learn from it?
Well, I tell you, I don't have any really dramatic kind of stories, or at least none that seem dramatic at this point. But generally, I always felt that if there was a wall in front of me, the best thing to do was go around it.
Very astute for a race car driver.
Yeah. So it was, I just somehow found different ways, and things happened, yes, because, as I said, people don't understand how really different it was for a woman then.
Yeah.
You just, right from the very start, when I was growing up, when I was a child, like up to the age of 5 or 6 or whatever, my best friend was a neighbor boy, not the one that was in the car with me, but another one. And he had a sidewalk bike, and we shared riding it and everything. And he was having a birthday party. He was then going to be 7 years old. Well, at that age, it was too old to be playing with girls, so I wasn't invited to his birthday party. Mm. I mean, this can be shattering. This is your very best friend, the person you played with most, and you're not going to go see a Tom Mix movie, you know? I was shattered.
Yeah.
And I ran after his dad had a paint company, so they had the pickup truck, and all the kids were riding, all the boys were riding in the back of the pickup truck. And I ran after it, yelling and crying.
Oh, gosh.
So they finally had to let me in. So tear-streaked and dusty, I got to go to the party after all and saw the Tom Mix movie. But I think I learned then that if you're going to live in a man's world, you're going to have to keep up with him one way or another.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
And if it's running after a pickup truck, you do that. But you know, I mean, how incredibly unfair all that was then.
Sure.
But it was the standard. And I tell you one quote that I really, really, really do like. Mm-hmm. Opens the book called The Go-Between by a English author named Hartley. Mm-hmm. And it's a quote I use a lot when I make speeches at car clubs and things, and that is, The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Isn't that great?
It is great and perfect for the story you just shared. You know, it's
Yeah.
There's a great quote that I love that Ayrton Senna, the great F1 driver, shared, and he said, "The past is just data. I only see the future." And it's very similar to the quote you just shared with me, that the past is the past. It's just a memory, and it's a lesson learned, and you just move forward.
Yeah, well, the important thing is the difference, and people often think, well, racing was just like it is now, only was different people doing it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case. Things were a lot different. Everything was considerably different. I mean, you look at television now, and when I was doing some TV for CBS Sports, a couple of pieces I did, and women weren't on television.
Right.
Doing that kind of thing. There were no women doing news. There was a guy told me, he said, well, people will not take serious news in a woman's voice. They can only do light news, you know.
Wow.
I mean, this is some guy who hired people for television telling me that nobody would listen to a woman's voice giving them serious news. Well, try to tell that to some of the gals who are anchors on TV now and who are incredible reporters and very, terrific.
Right.
And they don't know. They weren't there, so they have no idea how they would have been just shut down instantly. Nobody will accept news in your voice, so we can't hire you.
Well, thank goodness we had women like you to push those barriers and move through them. I think that's fantastic. And, let's shift gears here a little bit and go to the other end of the spectrum and perhaps share one of the many aha moments I'm sure you've had in your career, a time when you realized, you know what, I think I'm going to make it in this game of either racing or journalism, or you pick one of the many successes that you've had and tell us the steps that you took to turn that aha moment into your success.
That sounds almost like it involved planning and doing something and things. Most of the rides I got where somebody would call me up and say, hey, do you want to drive my car at Sebring? Zap, You didn't have a regular kind of racing teams and stuff then in that regard. People drove for the factory teams, and then they also drove for privateers and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But now three times I was offered a ride at Le Mans.
Wow.
One was on a Porsche factory team, and one was on Briggs's team, Briggs Cunningham's team, driving one of his Corvettes at Sebring, and another was with Luigi Canetti driving an Oscar with Ricardo Rodriguez. I was supposed to either that or somebody else. Anyway,
wow.
I could do that because women were not allowed to drive at Le Mans at that time. Now, Luigi had won Le Mans more than anybody else at that time. It was 3 times. So he had a little bit of clout. Mm-hmm. And he goes to the head of the organizer, Monsieur Aka, and I watched him talking to him, giving those lovely little Luigi shrugs and talking and talking, and coming back to me with another Luigi shrug and saying, Monsieur Aka says, this is an invitational race, and we do not choose to invite women.
Oh, my gosh.
So I never got to drive at Le Mans.
Oh, geez.
But they had let them drive earlier. Well, Europe was very open that way. Women could drive in races when they couldn't here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. But then a French woman had been killed at a race at Reims, and they thought, oh, that's very bad publicity. We won't let women drive at our race. So the thinking was absurd, but that's how they thought.
Sure.
And Lynn St. James got to drive, I think it was 72 or something. They started letting women drive again. Mm-hmm. But I would so much, can you imagine driving A Porsche, well, that was before Porsche won everything at that time, because their biggest car was 1.5 liters, I think, still.
Mm-hmm.
That's the perfect size. I love that size car.
Yeah.
And it would have been terrific racing on the Porsche factory team, for heaven's sakes.
Oh, gosh, wow.
Even though Porsche wasn't famous and big at the time.
Right. They were still there. Well, just the fact that you were there is absolutely amazing. And, of course, you did get to drive in many other races, in many other cars like you shared. But maybe you can share, and I'm sure you've had many proud moments in your career and your life, but is there one that you can think of today that stands out that you could share with us that was a really proud moment in your career?
Well, it was all one big problem. And I think probably getting the Ferrari when I drove at Sebring, and I met a guy up skiing, and he had 3 fantasies. I don't remember. One was being in a Western movie, and one was driving in a sports car race. And I thought, I'm into fulfilling men's fantasies insofar as I'm capable. So I said, you want to drive with me at Sebring?
Oh, my goodness.
And he said, yeah, sure, So I didn't have a car or anything. Here it was like January, and the race is in March.
Oh,
so
goodness.
You can see how things happen faster then.
Yeah.
So I went to Briggs, and I went to Luigi, and anyway, I sold my Porsche, road Porsche then, and I sold that, and Luigi and Briggs made it possible that I could buy this Ferrari that had raced at Le Mans.
Mm.
And so here I had a 250 GT short wheelbase, Sky body.
Wow.
Ferrari.
Yeah.
And so I took Alan. Alan Eager was his name. He was a great saxophone player, but he had never raced. They turned Lime Rock over to me for an afternoon or whatever, which is another thing is unlikely to do.
Sure.
And so I knew that Alan had a good feel for gearboxes, and it was a sensitive driver just from the road. Mm-hmm. But racing was different.
Yes.
Which he discovered. I gave him a ride around Lime Rock, just normal kind of riding, and then I started turning it up a little, and I look over and glance at him, and he's cowering in the corner. He says, "You're trying to kill me."
Oh, fantastic.
But he caught on pretty well, and by golly, of all things, at Sebring, we finished 10th overall, first in class, first in GT, and
wow.
GT was as important as the prototypes. Mm-hmm. So we made $2,000 prize money.
Nice.
Flew the car to Europe and went racing at the Nürburgring, which.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
So,
wow, dreams come true.
Yeah, Alan had a great time. It was.
I'll bet. What a fortuitous meeting on the ski slopes.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Let's have a little fun here. Do you remember your first, not your first car, but your first really special car? And could you share a memory that you had with that vehicle with us?
Yeah, probably when I was working for the San Francisco Chronicle in San Francisco, and my boss was a real car. Now, in fact, he won Best in Show with a car at Pebble one time.
Oh, wow.
But where did I get that? I bought an MGTC. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah. What happened was one of the guys at the Chronicle was a car nut, and Shell Cavalli was opening a British motor car company. Mm-hmm. The first, that was 50, 60 years ago or whatever. Anyway, we went to the opening of that, and there was this little MG, little black MG that it looked like a loose roller skate. It was unbelievable. And I fell in love with that so thoroughly. I had never experienced such craving for anything. I had to have that car.
Wow.
And I tell you, I wanted that car so bad that night the British pound was devalued and they dropped the price.
Oh, how fun. Now there's a lucky boob.
And so I called my dad back in Kansas, and he lent me the $1,800 to buy the car.
Oh, nice.
So that was my first major car.
Well, I'll tell you something, and I'll share a little story. The car that instigated my passion for automobiles, which has been most of my life, is an MGTC. My father bought one when I was probably 5 years old. And
That's what these were TCs.
Yeah, and I remember riding in the back deck behind him. He'd give us these these goggles to wear.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It was a 5-year-old size to sit back there.
Yes, it was.
Because there were no seats, but there was perfect size for a...
Yeah.
It was like
you could sit cross-legged there, and there was a little bar that ran across the back of the seats, and my dad called that the chicken bar.
Yeah.
And he said, if you're chicken, you'll hang on when we go around corners. But if you're not, you'll put your hands up like you're on a roller coaster. Of course, today he'd be arrested for child endangerment. But back then it was very different. How fantastic. And did you ever race that car?
No, I never raced TCs. I never raced. I raced MG at Sebring much later, an MGA.
Ah, okay.
But for a factory car. But I never raced the TC. They were charming and everything, but God, they were bog slow. You have to admit.
Yeah, I think so. How about seller's remorse? Is there a vehicle you've had in your life that you sold that you wish you could have back in your garage today?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I had some really nice cars, including Lancia and Alfa, my Giulietta. I had loved that, and I had and the Ferrari and all. But the car that I would really like to have back was my Mini Moke.
Really? Now, why is that?
The Mini Moke was a little Jeep-like looking Mini from the early Mini days. I had one in Vermont. It just was a charming little vehicle. It looked like a little Surrey kind of thing. In fact, I put fringe around the top of mine for a parade and painted it all up. But it was just as bare as it could be. Pretty much chassis with some seats and a wheel.
Yeah.
It was great fun. And marvelously, I don't know, nobody could even look at it without smiling, let alone ride in it.
I'm sitting here with a smile just thinking about those, and especially that of all the vehicles you've had, which have been some amazing vehicles, that's the one that is nearest and dearest to your heart. That is very cool.
Well, it's the one I would like to have because everyone says, what's your favorite car? I said, whatever I'm driving right now, if I like it. That's my current car, which is now 21 years old, is a two-door Suzuki Sidekick.
Oh, goodness.
And it has certain characteristics of a Mini Moke in that it's perky and cute and rides like a buckboard, and
it's an adventure.
It's I'm getting a little old for those bumps, tell you the truth. But
well, that is fantastic. Are there any current projects you're working on right now, Denise, that really have you excited and fired up?
Well, I'm doing some publishing, ebook publishing.
Oh, nice.
For Full Court Press, it's called, spelled Fulcorte. And our first book out was, I happened to be at a car event, a Porsche thing, and at dinner I sat next to a guy who kept talking about his friend Jimmy, and turned out it was Jimmy Dean. And he and Jimmy Dean had been friends the last 16 months of James Dean's life, and he had turned him on to racing, and that's why he had gotten into Porsche racing. And so I said, well, do you have a book? Because I was starting to do this publishing thing in my head. And he said, no, and I never will. And I said, why? And he said, that's, exploiting his friendship, et cetera, and so forth. And I thought, well, let's see, we're on the soup now. I have to desert to convince him otherwise. And I did. And he had never written a book before, but he did one. It's out, and it's available at Amazon, both as a on-demand paperback and as an ebook, and it's called Jimmy and Me.
Oh. And
I think it is the most charming and heartbreaking book. It's just terrific. And our next one will be out. It's almost ready to go online. It's just difficult because the author is Sir Stirling Moss, and it's a redo of his book, All But My Life.
Oh, fantastic.
And he wrote a charming foreword to it, and I wrote an afterword for it about he did that with Ken Purdy, a great writer then, and both of those guys were friends of mine at the time, so I did a afterword for that.
Oh, fantastic.
And then I'm going to do my book, By Brooks Too Broad for Leaping. That'll be as an ebook, and then I'm doing 2 more collections of my stuff from Auto Week that have never been published before, and they'll be published originally as ebooks.
Oh, fantastic.
And,
some great projects you're working on. That is great. Okay, Denise, this is a funny question, and I love asking people this question because it brings out a bit of their personality. If you were a car, what kind of car would you be? And why?
I would never be a car. You can't drive yourself.
Well, it's more about, I guess, your personality.
Well, my personality is to drive. So.
I see. I like that. Well, there's a very unique answer. I love that. That's great. Yeah, you can't be the car because you drive cars. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, we're up to a part of our talk here where I call it the last lap, and this is where I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask for some very quick blips of the throttle answers. So you got that polka dot helmet on and you're buckled up and ready?
Yeah.
What is the best automotive advice you've ever received?
I tell you, this reminds me of when Phil Hill and Stirling Moss and somebody else, I don't know, were on a radio show or TV or whatever it was. And they were all asking what advice they would give drivers.
Sure.
And Phil said he would tell them when they were making a left turn, if they have a green light, to pull out into the intersection. So when the other cars have to, coming at you, stop for the new red light, you then make a turn. And you don't hold up the left lane. And I laughed like crazy because that was always his pet peeve, and it's mine, are people who block you making a left turn because they wait and wait and wait until the light goes red and then it goes green again. When you can go... If you go out into the intersection, you can make the damn turn.
Yep, stick your nose. I like that. Pretty basic, but that's pretty cool, especially coming through some of the people that you've known. I think that's a great one. Now, you've talked about many books, and that's usually something I ask people is if there's a book that you would recommend to people. And you've talked about many of your books. Is there a book that you've read recently by someone else that you would recommend to people with automotive passion?
Well, I tell you, you can't go wrong going back with and reading the Ken Purdy books that got most Americans who are real car buffs of a certain age got turned on to motor racing by reading Ken Purdy.
Yeah,
can't go wrong with that.
Perfect.
Or modern day, a little more modern, Peter Egan.
Oh, yes.
And Pete Lyons, and those three are my favorite. And there's some really, really good guys now. They've been writing for the New York Times and for some really funny and clever people. And I just love them. I miss the magazines. I mean, I hate them fading. I love magazines. I love newspapers. I hate it that people are reading only on the internet because it's mostly so badly done. But
I understand. Pete Lyons has been a guest on Cars Yeah, by the way. So I enjoyed having him on the show. And some great books and Egan and all those are fantastic. And I'll remind our listeners that you can go to carsyeah.com/Denise McCluggage and find these links on her show notes page. Denise, we're up to the checkered flag, and you're a racer. You know what that means. The flag is out, pedal to the metal. And this last question I have for you can be a real doozy for some people. It might be an easy one for you. If you could only have one collector car in your garage, and money's no object, today I'm going to buy you and give you whatever you'd like, what would that vehicle be and why?
A collector car? Mm-hmm. I tell you what, it turns me on. Or the French coachwork between the wars.
Yes.
I can't wait I haven't been out to Peter Mullen's museum yet.
I was just thinking about that.
Peter collects the cars that when I'm a judge at Pebble, and I just know I'm a sucker for those things. I just love them.
Oh, yes.
And they're so incredible to look at. And
we'll have to plan a trip to Mr. Mullen's collection there because I've not been to that museum either, and I would love to go there. Those cars are works of art.
That would be terrific.
Yeah, works of art. Fantastic.
I want to do that.
Oh, absolutely. We'll add that to the bucket list. Denise, you've taken me on a great ride today, and I've really enjoyed your stories. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your day and sharing just a part of your journey through life with me. You've had such a rich life. What a fortunate lady you are. And it's great to have another woman on Cars Yeah. Seems like motorsports is so much of a man's world, but it's so great to have your perspective. Is there one parting piece of guidance you might offer our listeners before you drive off into the sunset in one of those teardrop works of beauty?
Piece of advice?
Yeah.
Keep the revs.
Keep the revs up. I love it. I love it. Yes, that's a great one. Listeners, you can find everything we talked about today here at carsyeah.com/Denise McCluggage. Denise, I want to thank you for being so generous with your time today and your expertise and for sharing a part of your life with me and with the Cars Yeah listeners. It's been a real treat. Until we talk again at the Mullen Museum, I hope, I'll see you down the road.
Okay, terrific. Ciao.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.